Hello and welcome to All Time Conspiracies. Now, for hundreds of years, exorcisms have been performed on people who are thought to be possessed by demons or evil spirits. But is there any evidence to prove that these exorcisms were successful? And would this then confirm that paranormal forces do in fact exist?
Now today we'll go through some of the most famous real exorcism cases and decide if any of them were successful. It's time to open the conspiracy files.
The case of Roland Doe was what inspired the original 1973 Exorcist movie. In Maryland, Missouri, 1949, a 13-year-old boy with the pseudonym Roland Doe underwent numerous exorcisms from priests who feared he was possessed. He was allegedly a shy child and formed a strong bond with his aunt Tilly, who was a spiritual woman. However, she died when he was 13, and being overwhelmed with grief, he allegedly tried to contact her using a Ouija board, with disastrous consequences. Instead of contacting his aunt, he allegedly became possessed by an evil force. Family members claimed they witnessed furniture and inanimate objects move on their own, and Roland would chant in Latin in a voice that wasn't his own. They sought the help of Edward Hughes, a Catholic priest and exorcist. When he first tried to exorcise the demon, Roland tore a mattress spring off a bed with remarkable strength and slashed Hughes's arm. After months of repeat exorcisms, Roland Doe was allegedly cured and went on to live a normal life. The story became legend, yet whether it actually happened as reported is still questionable. Was Roland Doe actually possessed by a demon?
So this is one of the most famous exorcist cases, and an interesting point brought up by writer Mark Obsaznik. And he says that people involved in this case basically saw what they wanted to see. So psychiatrists, Rob Doe suffered from mental illness, to priests, this was a case of demonic possession, and then to writers and film producers, this was a great story to exploit for profit. So basically those involved saw what they wanted to see.
That's really interesting. That's a great point. Because today, from a 21st century perspective, it's very easy to look back and think, oh, Roland Doe might have had some kind of mental illness, or some kind of emotional instability, particularly if his auntie died when he was 13.
But the one thing that this point doesn't explain is some of these supernatural occurrences that were said to have taken place, like furniture flying around and him speaking in a different voice, Latin phrases, and markings being etched on him and that kind of thing.
The problem there is that we have no contemporary hard evidence of this happening. It's all, essentially, it's hearsay, right? We've got newspaper articles from the time which contradict each other over basic facts like his age and where he lived. If they can't get that right, then how can they get the other stuff right?
Yeah, it feels a little bit like Chinese whispers was going on, wasn't it? That this is a kind of just an urban legend at the time.
Yeah. I mean, nevertheless, it is interesting to note that one of the priests involved did later say that the case in which I was involved was the real thing. I had no doubt about it then, and I have no doubt about it now. Which goes back to Mark Obsaznik's point, which is the priest believed it.
This was such a compelling story that, you know, a massive movie was made about it. This was clearly, there was something in this story. You know, I believe that there was a boy. I believe that he had these exorcisms taking place. So clearly some people believed that he was possessed. I'm not prepared to write it off, but I'm not entirely convinced.
For 13 years between 1974 to 1987 in West Pittston, Pennsylvania, an ordinary family allegedly encountered something they couldn't explain and couldn't free themselves from. Jack and Janet Smurl moved with their family to Pittston in 1973. They lived on a quiet, middle-class street with nothing out of the ordinary. However, things soon changed, and the family experienced a number of strange phenomena in the house. These experiences began as relatively minor incidents. The TV set suddenly caught on fire, pipes leaked spontaneously, and random scratches appeared around the house. However, as years went by, these incidents quickly escalated, with numerous members of the family claiming they were attacked and even sexually assaulted by an evil spirit in the house. The family went public with the information, and paranormal investigators claimed a demon lived in the house. They pleaded with the Roman Catholic Church to perform an exorcism, which was eventually agreed to in 1986. A total of 4 exorcisms were carried out in the house by a Father McKenna. The last of these finally brought the paranormal events to an end and was thought to be successful. Was the Smurl family residence actually home to a poltergeist?
So this piece of evidence has one major difference from the last piece of evidence, and that is the fact that the Smurls did write a book about this called The Haunted, which was later made into a movie, so they have profited from this story. So there's an incentive there to make it up.
Yep, there's a motive for
there is a
fakery.
motive, yeah. But then again, 1974 to 1987 is a long time to fake a story.
It is. That's a long con. That's playing a long game there.
You know, even if it is fake, they at least deserve a book deal after investing that much time into it.
But there is another difference with the previous case, which is that unlike in the case of Roland Doe, where the priests came along and they all believed it, in this case, you've got a priest who went to the house and stayed a few nights there and said that nothing unusual happened. So if even the priest won't confirm your story, then you got problems.
That is true. And the subsequent owner of the house, Deborah Owens, when she moved in after they left in 1988, she claimed that she never encountered anything supernatural while living there. But that could have been because the exorcisms were successful. And they rid the house of the poltergeist, and then from then on nothing supernatural happened. So maybe
it's possible.
Doesn't write the story off.
The sequence of events could point to that being true.
I think we've got to be careful with accusing this family of lying, because at the end of the day, it was the whole family who had the story for 13 years.
True. Yeah.
However, there are people who haven't accused them of lying, but maybe just said that they were mistaken. So there's the fact that Jack, during this time, had to undergo brain surgery and was suffering from short-term memory loss. And you've got this psychologist named Robert Gordon, who said that people often look at demonology to explain many tensions that they experience as individuals within their families. So you look at what they're actually complaining about: TV catching fire, floods, spontaneous pipe flooding. They could be issues that just have manifested from just staying
in the same house for a decade.
In the same house for a decade.
Yeah,
I mean, this could just be family issues. So you've got a potentially suspect motive.
Yeah.
And you've got people involved in the case who actively said that, no, there was nothing going on. So I think on balance, we can't write it off, but I don't think it's as trustworthy as the last case.
That sounds reasonable.
In 1952, in a small German town of Klingenberg, Anneliese Michel was born to a deeply religious Roman Catholic family, and when she was 17, she started having convulsions. She became suicidal and started seeing the devil and hearing demonic voices. She couldn't bear to be around images of Jesus and started eating spiders, coal, nails, and even drinking her own urine. Her family finally arranged for her to have a sanctified exorcism. Bishop Joseph Stangl approved the exorcism of Anneliese Michel and ordered total secrecy of the procedure. At the age of 23, Anneliese received 67 exorcisms by 2 priests. She died a year after these exorcisms began from pneumonia, weighing just 68 pounds, as she had refused to eat towards the end of her life. Her last words were, "Mother, I'm afraid." Despite being charged with negligent homicide over her death, the family never regretted the exorcisms and maintained for years that she was possessed by a demon. Was Anneliese Michel actually possessed?
Now, this is one of the more famous exorcism cases. This inspired the exorcism of Emily Rose. Not a bad film, actually.
It did, yeah. And to be honest, looking at it, I just think this is a tragic story. I'm not convinced that she was ever possessed. I think this is a case of mistaking me like some kind of mental illness or something for demonic possession. But she came from a very religious family, and at 16 she was diagnosed with epilepsy, and she was given a medication called Owlept, which is used in the treatment of various psychoses, including schizophrenia.
So it could be like multiple personality disorder that she's suffering from.
Exactly.
And her family's misinterpreting this
as she needs an exorcist.
Particularly because she started ranting towards the end about, that's it, she said she was dying to atone for the wayward youth of the day and the apostate priests of the modern church. And that's when her family stopped taking her to the doctors in the hospital. and started calling in the priests.
And she refused to eat, she was just losing weight, and she died
And
of
67 exorcisms as well. There's no way this is going to be good for you.
Yeah, exactly.
No way. Made even worse by the fact that the Catholic Church has officially reevaluated its position and classified this as a case of mental illness and not an actual possession.
Yeah.
And if the Catholic Church is saying...
But it's a bit too late for that, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. Just rubbing salt in the wound of the family.
Yeah. At least double down and say, we nearly got there. One more week and we could have saved her.
It's a very tragic incident. Here's a case where I think it was right for her family to be charged with negligent homicide, because they really should have taken her to the hospital so that she was at least on a drip or something, right?
Yeah. But what do you guys think? Do you think this was a real case of demonic possession, or do you think this was just a misidentified mental illness? Let us know in the poll above.
It's difficult to know whether any of these exorcism cases involved real demonic possession. There isn't any conclusive evidence besides witness testimony of paranormal forces at work. However, out of all the stories we've looked at today, I think the most compelling case was the one that inspired the original Exorcist movie, the case of Roland Doe.
However, I do think that we both generally believe that demonic possession was probably just some kind of mental illness that wasn't properly understood at the time. I don't know, that's what I think anyway. But what do you guys think? Are there any other famous exorcist cases that we missed that would change our minds? Let us know in the comments below, as well as any other conspiracies you'd like us to discuss.
And if you enjoyed this video, then please don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and consider supporting us on Patreon. Thank you very much.
See you next time.